Hello, folks. Thanks for tuning in again to the Britt Kanawha West Hancock Athletics Podcast. This is Dan Kroll on October 2nd, 2024, episode 115. And we have a special episode tonight. I kind of just told the guys it's kind of like a dual episode. We got the 1984 Britt seniors on here, minus a few teammates. And then we're also going to do it what I'm calling the 40 Years of Excellence podcast to highlight 40 years of the dynasty we know today of Britt and West Hancock football. So thanks to these gentlemen for coming on. We'll get some introductions going here in a few minutes. But first of all, I want to always let you guys know that this podcast would not be possible without my sponsors, and those sponsors give directly to the Bob and Linda Sanger Legacy Fund. So I want to make sure that we are giving the Sanger Legacy Fund its props on the screen here. Things that fund has gone to in the last couple of years: hobo run timing system, senior scholarships, activities display board, which just came in. We're getting that rolling. State title gear, golf cart shed project, youth baseball, softball updates, the West Hancock Hall of Fame. Speaking of Hall of Famers, we have a Hall of Famer on here with us, Mr. John Weiland. We also get money for speech students awards, new basketballs, etc. Lots of things that money goes towards. And we have lots of big plans in the future as well. So if you want to give to the Sanger Legacy Fund, go to sangerstrong.com. If you want to sponsor the podcast, get a hold of me, Dan Kroll, and we'll make that happen. Speaking of my sponsors, I got 15 of them tonight. We have Daniel's Auto Collision in Charles City, Jeff and Becky Nielsen, the Britt Food Center, Lehman Family Dental in Clear Lake, Katie's Salon and Tanning in Titonka, Vexen Fishing and Tackle Industries owned by Derek and Lizanne Ing, Jay Hiscocks Estate Farm Insurance, and Lois Conaway. And then my lifetime sponsors who gave $400 to be sponsors for life: Levi Dawn Trucking, Window World of Mason City, Doug and Kathy Zool, Pritchard's Auto, Ewing Funeral Home and Monument Company, Triple B's Food Trucks owned by Brett Kozlerich, Swenson's Hardware, and I got a couple new ones: Zach and Chris Schlugger, and Nick Schmidt became lifetime sponsors. Again, they gave $400. If you want to always be on the podcast as an advertiser, please let me know and we'll get that taken care of. Way back when, I always like to highlight a couple previous episodes. We have enough of these. We can go back 50 and 100 episodes now. So 50 episodes ago on episode 65, I talked to a bunch of my old elementary teachers from Britt Elementary School. And then 100 episodes ago on episode 15, the late, great Jim Trulson and I sat down in his house to have a good discussion about a lot of good times in Britt. So check those out. They'll be linked into my Facebook post later tonight when this thing is live. All right, let's get things started with some introductions here, fellas. Welcome again, the 1984 seniors from the Britt Football Team. We'll do some introductions, tell everyone who you are, where you are today, what's keeping you busy, all that good stuff. Let's go like Chris to Stephan to Jay to Hall of Famer John Weiland and Jeff. We'll go in clockwise order. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, well, thanks for having me on. And I'm Chris Fisher, and I live in the Kansas City area, and I've been down here for approximately 15 years. I work in the crop insurance industry. I've been in the crop insurance industry roughly 30 years. It doesn't seem like it's been that long already, but definitely 30 years. That job moved me around to Des Moines, to Cincinnati, and to here, and married to Sandy Carter, that was a Britt graduate, and I have 3 adult children, 2 boys and a girl.
And Chris, you need to address your wife properly. We've already talked about this.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. And my wife actually is a Hall of Famer too. So my wife's a Hall of Famer in general. So there you go.
Hall of Fame, Sandy Fisher Carter. There we go.
Stephan, I do hear about it for sure.
Yeah. Stephan, tell us about you. Where are you at these days? What's up?
Hello, I'm Stephan. Back in the days when I was in Britt, Iowa, my name is actually Stephan, but that's all right. I live in New Zealand for the last 30-odd years, which is a couple of hours ahead of you guys. So it's Thursday, the 3rd of October here, just to confuse things at lunchtime. I'm married to Sue. Got a daughter and 2 stepsons and 4 grandchildren who are out at the beach at the moment. I've been teaching at St. Peter's College for about almost 30 years now. So it's a fabulous life here in New Zealand on the other side of the world. And I only ever played one match or one play in the championship team, but that's my claim to fame anyway.
Nice. And what do you teach at the college?
I teach things like physics, robotics, VEX robotics, and some STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math subjects.
Nice. And like I said, Stephan's from the future, so he already knows how this podcast is going to go. He said it goes well. So it's like, what you say, like 2:00 already the next day. So that's pretty cool.
Yep.
Having a lot of people on this podcast from other states, a couple countries, and the first New Zealander. So that's awesome. Jay.
Yeah. So Jay Hempy, I after high school, I went to Iowa State University and then moved to, I've been to Minneapolis since, would it be since '89? I went to the University of Minnesota. So I'm a Gopher guy. And I realized we had a tough outing last weekend with the Iowa Hawkeyes. So I'm fully aware of that, but I remember last year when the fair catch happened. So anyway, I like that one. Anyway,
Nice.
I'm not a Hall of Famer, but I supported a lot of Hall of Famers in my high school career. So anyway, I have a wife, Michelle. I got 2 kids, Hannah and Matt, who are grown also, and I have 2 stepkids. I live in Maple Grove, Minnesota. Work at a company called Infinite Health, which is a multi-specialty practice up in the Twin Cities. So that's a little bit about me.
Nice. And it was not a fair catch. All right, Hall of Famer John Weiland. Go ahead.
Take that, Jay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm John Weiland. I reside right here in Britt. Guess never really left, but maybe 3 years of college. Married to Kathy Madsen Weiland, your guys' classmate. For the second time, actually. That's a long story, but that's something else. She works at Stellar. I work at the co-op here, been there like going on 33 years. We've got 3 kids. Oldest is a daughter, Kaylee, lives in Woden, married to Corey Squire. They have 2 kids, so I actually have 2 grandkids now, Addison and Kinley, make sure I get that right. Then my middle one is Logan. He is here in Britt too, married to Steph Malone. They got married last year. He actually works with me at the elevator. You guys wouldn't believe this, but he's actually my boss. I don't think many people would go for that, would they? But so these are my payback years of him not listening to me. And then the youngest is Lucas. He's in town here too. He works at Alliant, and he's married to Abby Malone. So they married sisters.
Oh, nice. Yeah. And Mr. Kelly.
I'm Jeff Kelly. Like Jay, I went to Iowa State right after Britt High School. From Iowa State, I actually went to graduate school in Minnesota at Mankato State. And then from Mankato State, went up to North Dakota. I was just up there about 5-6 years. I coached wrestling up there, and I taught at a small college just about 60 miles west of Fargo, North Dakota. And then late 90s, I moved back to Central Iowa. Worked at Grandview College for about 3 years, and the last 22 years I've worked at Des Moines Area Community College. I work at our Ames campus. I'm the site director there, where I work a lot with our high school programs that bring high school students into our building that take classes like auto mechanics, building trades, a lot of your hands-on kind of programs.
All right. Well, welcome again, fellas. We're missing Wade Bruns, Todd Hughes, and Don Hiscocks tonight. If someone might pop on here, and we'll get them on here, but we'll see what happens. Like again, 84 Britt Football Team, kind of spearheaded this, what we call the dynasty today, 40 years of excellence. Can't not mention, though, the 1973 state championship Britt team that Coach Sanger coached. He won that title in 73, and then there was about a 10, 11-year period where we didn't make it back to the playoffs. You guys made it back to the playoffs for the first time since that season. And since then, we've been in the playoffs 33 times, 9 state title games, lots of accolades we'll get into a little bit here. So we're going to highlight the 40 years of excellence that you guys kind of spearheaded, and also talk about your senior year. So buckle in. This might be a long episode, but that's okay. We're going to have a good time doing it. So want to highlight some other Britt tradition. We won conference titles in 1940, 48, 51, and 1958 through 62. We won 5 in a row. Won another conference title in 73 along with the state title. And then as a freshman, you guys won a conference title in 1981. What do you guys remember about 1981, stepping onto the football field for the first time with Coach Sanger, the older guys, winning a conference title, and then building up to your senior year of 84 in the quarterfinals?
I think, part of that, at least for me, that was really the first time that Britt, I think it was, guys like Joe Pritchard that had a weight set at his house, where the high school really didn't have much equipment for exercise equipment. So it was really that class of 82 is really kind of the first ones that kind of showed us the way of, here's what you do if you want to become a championship football team. These are really the kind of steps you have to take. So I think it was that class that really kind of showed us the way, along with, my older brother, Tim Kelly, Todd Byers. It was some of those guys that really, I think, at least for me, kind of pointed us in that right direction.
Yeah, I would say I agree with all that as well. The big thing I remember, there just seemed to be so much hope and optimism and stuff, because I'm sure these guys remember, but that 81 team was a heck of a team, and they were huge. They were so big and physical. I mean, that was one thing I really remember, is basically being scared to death whenever we had a scrimmage against those guys, because they would just clean our clocks. But just so much hope. And to me, like Jeff just said, the Whipples and the Molars and the Hudsons and all that, it just so much hope. And I honestly think that's where it all started. And then we just kept kind of pounding on it those next few years and finally broke through in 84.
Yep. And to give a little context to that 81 season, we went 7-1 that year. The only loss was a 14-12 loss to Osage, and I believe that was on the road. That kept us from an undefeated regular season in the playoffs. Back then, 7-1 kept you out of the playoffs a lot of times. So that team probably could have been and should have been a playoff team. So
it would have been a state champ team, I think.
Yeah.
I remember that loss riding home from on the bus after that game, and I just remember everybody being just mad that they lost, and I can't remember the controversy. I think there was some controversy, but I just remember the loss and just how that impacted me, how I looked at football going forward.
Yep.
So did you dress then, Jay? Do you remember that was the year we could dress?
No, I did
Chris
dress.
and I were talking about that.
Only Hall of Famers dressed their
No,
freshman year.
no, because actually I
Only
did
Hall
not.
of Famers.
Yeah, I didn't dress that. I was
Don.
telling Chris that.
I only dressed my senior year, I think.
I told John I thought we were doing stats that year for the game, but I can't remember for sure.
Oh boy, the razzing begins. I love it.
Yeah, I just remember that was a heck of a team. Like Chris said, they were huge. You didn't want to practice. You remember, Wednesdays we always did special teams, and that was the worst. Yeah. But I will bring up, remember, Chris, you don't remember it, do you? But I will bring up, we ran a touchdown back on them guys. I talked about it in my podcast.
Oh, yeah, I remember, yeah.
Yeah. Do you guys remember that at all?
Nope. I absolutely do.
It was one of the worst things we ever did, but we did it. Yeah, that was one heck of a team, I tell you what.
Yep. And the crazy thing is here, we know Coach Sanger, Coach Bob Sanger, 358 wins, 3 state titles, 4 runner-ups. But going into 81, he had a 47-60 record. Nowadays, his first 3 seasons were like 3-21 or something like that. Nowadays, you're gone. Like a high school football coach doesn't survive that. By the time you guys left the program, you guys got that up to a 69-72 record. A couple games into 85, he got to 500 and he never looked back. And then it just went on a tear. So just you guys, again, I just going to keep reiterating the fact that you guys were that team that really spearheaded this, what we know today as West Hancock football. So let's hit the scores here of your senior season. We'll start it off against Rockford on the road. 53-12 win against Rockford, 26-12 win at home against Lake Mills, 42-21 win at Garner, You lost to North Iowa Buffalo Center. I don't remember what they were coined as back then. They kept adding towns. Lost to them 23-22. The next week you beat Northwood on the road 14-13. A home 8-0 win against Belmont the next week. 13-10 win against Osage we'll get to here in a little bit. 34-0 win at Forest City, and then we entered the 1A playoffs. First round at South Hamilton, 14-7 win, and then ended the season in your careers with a 27-7 loss at Pocahontas. So we're going to jump into the game by game here, quickly go through some, spend a little bit more time on some others. Rockford, 53-12 win. To give some historical context, we had been playing them in week 1 since 1964. And we also played them in 56, 57, and 58. So for some reason, Britt and Rockford always played in the week 1 non-conference game. We were down 6-0 at the end of the first quarter, got 21 points in the second, 6 in the third, and 26 points in the fourth quarter. Hall of Famer John Weiland had 4 rushing touchdowns, 134 yards rushing. Don Hiscocks had 2 passes to Weiland for 65 yards. What do you guys remember about opening up the season against Rockford? Did you have a good feeling after that game going into the conference slate?
I don't remember anything. You guys are going to have to help out on that.
Well, I can make a couple. I mean, really, the main thing I remember about Rockford is I just remember John had it. Well, I should say Hall of Fame John had a great game. I mean, I just remember after the game was over, that's all people talked about was John at Rockford. And beyond that, the only thing I would say, I did read a few articles, but we were down at the end of the first quarter, but they said what happened was there was a coin flip, we won, but then the wind switched directions or something. So we ended up kicking off into the wind or whatever. And we just had terrible field position and we were fighting field position that whole game. And then that's why all of a sudden it just started taking off after that.
Stephan, do you remember what game you played in?
I mean, it was later in the season, but I do remember one of the early seasons of one of the early games in the season at home. I was in the stands, and it was bitterly cold, and some people in front of me had some hot chocolate, and I was wanting some hot chocolate, but I wasn't allowed because it was really hot chocolate.
So if we get to the game you played in and you remember which game that was, let us know and we will talk about that in great detail. So conference play against Lake Mills at home, you guys came out with a 26-12 win. It was 13-0 good guys at halftime. Each team scored 6 in the third, and then we outscored them by 1 in the fourth for that 14-point win. Jeff Kelly had 2 scores. Mike, your brother, had 1 score rushing. Hall of Famer John Weiland had a 50-yard punt return for a touchdown, and Tony Foy took over at quarterback because Don Hiscocks was injured. Talk about Don's injury and how that affected the team and how Tony stepped in for you guys.
I think with Don, Don was a real leader. I mean, he was somebody that not only was he a great athlete, a great player, I thought he was just a really good leader for us. And so it was, for us, it was hard to lose him, because he had been with us the whole time through junior high, somebody we always relied on. And then, when Tony came in, I mean, Tony did a great job as well, because, Tony, good athlete himself. So he stepped in and filled Don's shoes pretty well for us.
What was Don's injury again? He did a podcast with me a couple years ago, and I'm just drawing a blank on what he injured. Do you guys remember what that was and how?
I think it was a knee injury, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was an ACL.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah.
Do you remember, was it on like a drop back when he was passing or just kind of a fluke thing? Do you remember the details around it?
I don't.
I just remember being on the ground, and I feel like it's on the south end of the field, but beyond that, I don't. The thing I do recall, though, Don was playing both ways. He was our kicker. I mean, so he was quarterback, probably like a DB, I'm guessing, is what he was too. So 3 people end up replacing him when he got hurt and went out. And I would say it probably took the wind out of our sails a little bit when that injury happened, because a senior and, like Jeff said, one of our leaders, and we were really relying on him for the whole season.
Yeah, Don was a very good player. We missed him when he got hurt.
Yeah, and if you haven't checked out that podcast I did with John or with Don, make sure you check that out. It's in like the 40s episode I did. Really good dude, super nice guy to talk to. So check that one out. All right, I'm going to switch gears to some of the 40 years of excellence here. Since 1984, your senior season, we've had 40 football seasons. Britt and West Hancock has won 20 conference or district titles, so that's 50% of the years. The crazy part is of the 20 years we did not win a conference or district title, we took second place in the district. So 36 out of 40 years we've been top two in the conference or district. And of the four we weren't top two, one of them was a third place finish. So crazy numbers there. We won titles in 84, 86, 87, 90, 91, 93 through 96, 2002, 2003, 05, 06, 10, 11, and 12, and then we ripped off 4 in a row, 2019 through 2022. Coach Bob Sanger won 17 of those. Coach Mark Sanger has won 4 of those. They were obviously, if you remember, they were co-coaches in 2019, so that's how that adds up to 21 out of 20 titles. They shared that title together. All right, let's get to the Garner game here. Always a fun one to talk about. On September 21st, 1984, you guys traveled to Garner. Won that game. You doubled them up 42-21. In that 42-21 win at Garner, it was 28-0 at halftime. Describe the Britt Garner rivalry up to this point in 84. What do you guys remember about the intensity that was Britt Garner at the time?
For me, it was,
Statutes of limitations have passed, so anything you did back then, you're good to go.
I mean, it was it, right? It's Minnesota versus Iowa, Iowa State versus Iowa. It was the game. I think everybody looked forward to it.
Did you guys know the players over there personally, or was it just those guys from Garner? Because nowadays with social media, the kids are all buddies with each other. So the rivalry is more like bragging rights to their buddies. Back then, I felt like it was a little more just, I don't like those guys because they're from the other team.
I think it was kind of a little of both. I knew a few of them. I mean, there was Patza, Dan's cousin was on there. There was a couple guys on there, but it was just kind of a love-hate thing. Yeah, you definitely, that was the game you look forward to and you didn't want to lose. Of all the conference games, that was the one.
Never won.
Garner, like Jay said, I mean, it was definitely a rival, and it was that way. I mean, you grew up with it like that. You always, Garner was the big rival, whatever sport it was. But like John just said, they had some really good athletes at Garner where, even though our score was pretty big, it was still, I don't remember a lot from that game, but it was a tough game. It wasn't like it was just an easy pushover either. So, it was definitely one of those where, we had to be in our A game.
They definitely came on and finished the season pretty strong. I think they played Osage pretty, decently as well. So, I remember there's probably some even things that went on between the two towns at times, like I feel like they do something to our field one time, so it's just always stuff like that going on. So definitely a big rivalry.
Yeah, wasn't it? They came over and burned like a G into the field or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't remember what year it was. I remember reading about that.
Yeah. So yeah, that was definitely on everybody's mind for sure. But I don't know. I got a question for the Hall of Famer, John. Isn't the Garner game, now I could have this wrong, but remember how Bob always had you on punts? If they're just going to let that ball kind of dribble down and keep rolling and nobody's paying attention, go up and pick it up and run it. Didn't you do some big play in the Garner game and run that thing for quite a while? Or maybe I'm thinking of a wrong game. Do you remember?
No, I don't. I mean, I remember him saying that ball's never a dead ball, but I guess I don't remember in that game or not.
Okay. I just remember you so many times that ball would be bouncing around and nobody's paying attention and you'd run up and grab it and get a return out of it. But anyway.
Yeah.
My senior year was 20 years after yours, and Coach Sanger was still telling us that exact same thing. He goes, you never know. What if someone nicked it with their foot or something when they were getting out of the way? You could pick it up and go with it, and then the referees would frantically blow their whistle, like, what are you doing? But He goes, you never know. So 20 years later, he still coached the same way.
Did
In
you,
this,
Dan, did you by chance give the stats for Hall of Famer John
I
Wyland?
was just going to. So first of all,
I don't want you to miss his stats.
yep, Jeff had 4 rushing
Take
touchdowns.
his stats here in a bit.
Yep. And then Hall of Famer John Wyland, 175 yards on 12 carries. That's
175. Wow.
12 carries. That's a pretty good average there. Mike Kelly had a rushing touchdown, and Vance Hagen was 6 for 6 on extra points. You guys talked about how Don Hiscocks was your kicker. Vance Hagen jumped in. I believe he was a sophomore that season.
He
and
was.
he did a solid job kicking for pretty much 3 full seasons at that point. So, yeah. All right, here we go. You ready for the loss? The one that hurts a little bit? Always joke on this podcast. We spend more time talking about the losses than we do the wins because the losses were shocking because they didn't happen very often. Buffalo Center Rake at home, 23-22 loss. We were up 8-7 after the first quarter. Then we exchanged points, so it was tied at 15 at halftime. We took a 22-15 lead into the fourth quarter, and then they scored 8 in the fourth to our 0. A lot of 2-point conversions, it looks like. What do you guys remember about the timing of this game? How much time was left when they scored? Or what was the situation with that?
Timing was, I don't remember too much about timing at all, but I guess I have to raise my hand and say I contributed to that loss. So that I think I fumbled 2 or 3 times, like on the 1-yard line, and so that was not a stellar game on my half there. But I guess and this kind of puts me ahead of things. But talk about Coach Sanger was, and even Coach DeLeon, that both of those coaches were so great about the true measure of a champion is how you rebound from a loss. And so I think that was one thing that really instilled in myself and a lot of us players was, yeah, we did play that well. We lost this game, but guess what? There's still a lot of the season left. We can still come back and be champions. And I think we ended up doing that.
Yeah, I did. And Jeff, you don't need to take credit for all that. I'll tell you, I was telling John, I remember having a terrible game that way too. So I think we just had one of those really bad games. I believe all of us felt at the end we should have never lost that game. But if we didn't lose that game, I don't know if we'd end up beating Osage later on in the year either, And one of the challenging things I remember, they ended up having a good record. They were like 5-3 and almost made the playoffs. So they were a good team, but we just felt like we should beat them. But they threw the ball a heck of a lot. And I think that was a little harder on us at that point in time. And that Tony James is a pretty darn good quarterback too. So
well, that Matson kid, wasn't he the running back? He was quick. He was the one that we couldn't contain, I thought.
Yeah.
And he was only junior, sophomore. I can't remember. He wasn't a senior, I didn't think. He was pretty good. I don't know. They just maybe we overlooked them when they came here, but they played us well.
All right, let's take a look here. Do some 40 years of excellence. I'm going to break down the program records by decade. For you guys, we're starting it in 84. So from 84 to 89, the program was 52-11. In the 90s, that was up until recently kind of our peak decade, 91-17 in the 90s. In the 2000s, we went 76-27. Spent a lot of those years in 2A. Handful of those years, I should say. From 2010 to 2019, we went 78-35. And from 2020 to present day, as of last Friday against West Fork, we're 51-4 in 5 seasons or so. Total record since your senior year, 348-94. So in 40 seasons plus 5 weeks of this season, we still don't have 100 losses in those 40 years. That's a pretty incredible clip. That's 78.73% win percentage. Only averaging 2.3 losses per season. Again, it's going to take a while to get to that 100 loss since 84 at this point. So pretty cool stuff. Again, a testament to Coach Sanger, Coach Perkins, you guys mentioned, and all the classes that have come through Britt and West Hancock. All right, 1984, we're back to that. You guys rebounded from that 1-point loss with a 1-point win. Got a 14-13 road win at Northwood Kensett. And that essentially, I would say, kept your playoff and conference title hopes alive. 2 losses probably doesn't get you in the playoffs. 2 losses does not get you the conference title more than likely. Talk through the game where we led 6-0 after 1, 14-7 at halftime, and then they scored 6 points in the fourth quarter. We got shut out in the second half with a 1-point win. What do you guys remember about the Northwood game?
I didn't remember it was that close. I'm
Who
surprised.
scored the touchdowns?
Tony Foy, let me see my stats here. Tony Foy, 2 completions, both went for touchdowns
Who?
to Jay Hempy.
Take,
Set me up for that one.
take your hat off, Jay.
Yeah.
Wow, buddy.
I changed to Iowa State.
For multiple reasons. Take your hat off. Yeah. 1 for 44 yards, 1 for 25, both in the first half, like we already said. And then Jeff Kelly had the 2-point conversion, which ended up being the difference in the game, obviously, with a 1-point win. Defensive slugfest, apparently, though. Jeff had 17 tackles, Chris had 13. John, Hall of Famer, Weiland had 14, and Don Finch had 11 tackles. That's all I know because that's all the newspaper put for defensive stats. What do you guys remember about this one?
I will say one thing I was kind of surprised. I mean, 2 passing touchdowns in one game for us, and probably still today, is pretty spectacular. So, I mean, that's real shocking. One thing I always remember, and one thing I'd always appreciate about a Coach Sanger, was when I'd come back from college after playing or on break and lifting weights, he would always talk about, hey, what could I do different, or what be some things that I could implement? And so I always talked to him about the pass game or doing some tight end passes or stuff. And he'd sit there and listen, and we'd talk about it, but he would never implement any of that into it because he just wanted to keep running and running and running. But I do find it interesting that we actually did end up, scoring via passes.
Yeah.
But the final thing I'll say before I'll let everybody else talk, 2 things. This was a heck of a good football team too, because they made the playoffs. And there are some real good athletes on that team, real good track people John would have ran against. But just you show this little stat here on this page, Jeff Kelly, 17. I mean, that was a common theme every single game. He led the tackles almost every single game. And then you even look, and Don Finch is in there. So there's another sophomore that's coming in and contributing. We just didn't have that many numbers, but we had a lot of studs that were playing the game.
How many players would you guess were on the roster 9 through 12 back in '84 as a 1A school? 50 or 60 maybe?
Probably not that many. Do we?
Yeah, I'd say 50 might be pushing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, Chris had a good point. I mean, even would we have 7 seniors out total?
Yeah.
So we really relied a lot on, a really good junior class. The sophomores are really good too. So we relied on a lot of, sophomores, juniors for our success. It wasn't just the 7 of us. We really had some good underclassmen on that team.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Like you said, Don Finch, Vance Hagen, Mike Kelly.
Yep,
Jeff
my brother Mike.
Tony Boothroyd.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tony.
Or
Yeah.
Todd Haley and Mike Smith on the offensive line. They were good.
Yep. There's a reason I scored a few touchdowns. It wasn't me.
Yeah, it was.
There was holes you could drive a truck through.
I just want to know if 2 touchdowns in one game is a record for Britt for receiving.
I think that is.
You're in the Hall of Fame, Jay. Put him in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I should be.
That's probably gold plated somewhere, Jay.
Yeah.
Well, I just so happen to know a guy who's on the podcast right now that did a record book for the football program here. I think about, just off the top of my head here, about 10, maybe 10 guys have had 3 touchdowns in a game receiving. And then there's, I think, 46 times we've had a guy have 2 receiving touchdowns in a game. So
Part of that.
not
See,
bad.
Jay, though, that's West Hancock. You got the Britt record.
Yes, right.
Yeah, there you go.
You know dang well we didn't throw that much back then. I'm surprised when you talk about that, how much we really did throw.
Yeah.
Wait till you see the last stat I do before we end. I did some addition and multiplying today. Had a sick kid, and I'm like, I gotta find one more good fact for tonight. And the difference between yardage for rushing and yardage we've gained for passing and receiving. It was vastly different in the last 40 years. So, but next week against Belmont was another low-scoring defensive battle. You guys won 8-0. Jeff Kelly scored in the second quarter, also got the 2-point conversion. We got out yardaged by 6 yards. We had 199 rushing and 16 passing. They had 91 rushing, 130 passing to get 221, 6 more than our 215. But we did recover 3 fumbles in this one. I'm guessing that was the difference in the game. Were they timely turnovers? Do you guys remember?
I don't remember any of that either. The only thing I remember is it was a tough conference. If you think all the teams, I mean, on that Belmont, there was Lotes, McLaughlin, the whole conference was tough. Look at the scores,
No.
Well, and
Just-
John, to add to your point, I mean, I did a little reading because I can't remember like I used to, but that's like only the second time we'd beat Belmont since 1973 or something like that. So that was a pretty darn big win for us, even though it was 8-0 or whatever the score was. So they kind of owned us for quite some time.
All right. 40 years. Wes Hancock and Britt have been to the playoffs 33 times in those 40 years. We've lost in the first round just 6 times. Lost in the first round once. We've been to the quarterfinals 11 times, the semifinals 6 times, and the finals 5 times. 5-time runner-up. I wrote that wrong. And then we've collected 5 state title trophies, 4 of them since 1984. If you get a chance to go to the school at any point in time, I rearranged the trophy case this summer, and I forgot to put the picture on here, but I put all 5 state title trophies next to each other, all 5 runner-up trophies next to each other. The semis are next to them, and then all the other ones are off to the side of that old trophy case. It looks pretty awesome. It's pretty incredible that we are, again, 33 out of 40 years in the playoffs. Only 6 of those were first-round losses, so there's a lot of heavy and big hardware there in the trophy cases. So again, awesome program we've put together since 84, and then adding 73 into that as well. All right, big one. Here we go, fellas. Osage game. Couple close calls the previous weeks kept us in the playoff hunt, kept us in the conference title hunt. Big game against Osage, 13-10 in overtime. So 0-0 at halftime. We score in the third to make it 7-0. They score in the fourth to send it to overtime at 7-7. And then we scored 6 in overtime to their 3 for the 13-10 win. What do you remember about Osage score in the fourth to tie it? Kind of a momentum swinger there. And then walk us through the overtime session.
I think Jay should commentate this one.
Yep, this
Jason
is
just told the
Jay
whole
right
thing.
here.
I don't remember the touchdown by Osage. I remember the overtime for sure.
Well, oh, here we go. All right.
Well,
I
we have-
remember the Osage touchdown. I'll tell you that later.
We have kind of overtime proof here, so let's get to that while I have that up. I don't know what the
I just want
sound
to make Tony Boothroyd was our quarterback, right? Or was it Tony?
24.
24. Here we go. We're on offense, if you can't tell. There's the pass. Floater. And Jay is running to
The
whatever
50 yard.
that direction.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy after that game. That was fun.
Does it show Don Hiscocks out
Yeah,
there?
it does. It does.
Does it? All right.
Right here, coming up.
There he is.
There he was. Yeah.
Pretty sweet. Pretty cool that we still have that on video to a degree. So thanks to Chris for sending that over. That's pretty awesome.
That's
Yeah,
fun.
the videos got kind of bad over the years, but a couple things I was going to add there. The one thing that was, Osage was a heck of a football team. Those guys were studs and big and strong. In fact, I mean, so they were a 3A school and we're a 1A school. And I believe they're rated like in the top 5 when we played them, undefeated, won like 8 straight conference championships. And here we are, we're thinking we can beat them and play with them. So that was just definitely a great win for us. And you did ask the question about how they tied the game. And I do recall that because it was me but it was a punting. I was punting in the end zone, and we just had a snap miscue with me, and they ended up recovering the fumble in the end zone for a touchdown. So yeah, that's kind of hard to forget, but that's how it got tied up. But anyway, that was a heck of a game.
Do you remember how much time was left at that point? Did you guys have a chance to go down and score before regulation was up, or was it pretty much towards the end?
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Does anybody remember the play called?
Probably a run.
No, I think it was a screen pass.
Oh, was it?
John.
Is that why were there allegedly linemen downfield?
Yeah, there were a lot of linemen down.
What did they call
They didn't call it. No,
it? Doesn't matter.
That's right.
Touchdown, that's what they called it.
Yep. Osage is not, right next door to Britt. I'm guessing their stands are full. I'm guessing our stands are full. Talk about the community support at this point, and just that it's Osage, so you want to win that one.
Yes, I think I had the kickoff at this point, and my only ever play, and I can't believe it was against Osage, which one of the the better teams, obviously. Yeah. And why I got put in, but I did, and then I had to be part of the tackle that, like Chris was saying, they're huge guys, did the kick return, and so that was my one and only claim to fame of the team.
That's a big one to be in. Did you have any experience playing football, Stephan, before you came to Britt?
Never played it before.
How did you end up?
The preseason training was already full on the way. You guys have probably done three weeks before I even came to Britt.
And how'd you end up going out for football? Did someone say, "Hey, you should," or did you ask about it? How'd that go?
I don't think there was any other winter sport, and I love sport.
Just wanted to be active and be a part of it.
Yep.
Did you try kicking too? Were you a kicker? Or am I thinking wrong?
Yeah, I was a kicker.
Yeah, I thought you kicked too.
Yeah, because I played soccer in Holland, so that's obviously the place for a European to be.
Yeah. Did you play any other sports, Stephan, at Britt?
I did athletics in the spring.
Okay, like track.
Yeah.
Cool. So you got a double dose of Coach Sanger. What did you think of Coach Sanger? Was he unlike any coach you've ever had before?
Well, he was amazing. I mean, his commitment to the team, being on the sidelines in his hospital bed and being, injured in his back problems, and still being there in sub-zero temperatures, things like that. It was just amazing.
Hold on just a second. I'm glad you mentioned that. I have a picture. You guys can see that. That's Coach Sanger. Which playoff game was that? Was that the Pocahontas game?
I think that's South Hamilton, isn't it?
Well, I think that one is from South Hamilton, Jay. Yeah, you're right. But Pocahontas was too. Yeah.
Yeah, he had back problems. I remember when I was in school, and stemmed from years ago. And most people, I think, would be at home at that point in time, just checking the radio, or someone calling them if they there weren't cell phones, but finding a way to get the information. But he wasn't gonna miss a game. So yeah, pretty crazy. That's Coach Sanger for you. All right.
So before you move on to the next game, are we going over stats?
You what?
I want to know how many pass completions were in the Sage game. I mean, there's no love for receivers in Britt West Hancock football, and I'm here tonight to stand up for the receivers. So,
Jay, we love you, Jay.
Not really, but
let's be honest. Are they really receivers or just tight ends and running backs, essentially? So,
what would Coach Sanger say?
They're just all-purpose athletes.
There you go. Anyone can catch a ball out there. The 3 times maybe a game that we do that. So I have all the box scores. I want to look up someday how many games we've won without completing or attempting a pass, because most teams anymore are fairly balanced. The running game's starting to come back into the limelight a little bit, but for years now in high school football, even small classes, teams want to be pretty balanced. And us, we're like, we don't have to pass the ball. Why would we pass the ball? We've won a lot of games with 0 passing yards. It's just a different world we live in up in Britt. So, all right, this game gave us essentially a split of the title as long as we beat Forest City the next week. You guys did that 34-0. It was 21-0 at the end of the third quarter. Then you doubled your point total in the fourth. First time in the playoffs since 1973. How did you guys hear? Do you remember hearing that you're in the playoffs? Did you know going into Forest City a win got you in? Did you have to sit and wait for a while? What do you remember about how that worked back then?
I think I remember we just knew we won, we were in. Doesn't that sound right, guys? That we win that game, we were in?
Yeah, I think so.
That's what I remember.
Yeah, there's been years in the past where it's you wait till midnight and then the association puts out the playoffs. Or back then I think they have to send faxes or something or call the school and you had to kind of sit tight late at night. It was a different world.
I just remember some of the papers like having projections, like saying if such and such beats so and so, they win the night, they're automatically in, and there was stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure that we just knew we won, we would be in.
Yeah. Because this was the days before district football. District football was you're a champ, you're in. Some years it was if you're a second placer, you're in, or there's a point total. You couldn't really do that in this era because of conference, there was 1A, 2A, and 3A schools playing in the same conference sometimes like we had in the NIC. So did they have a bracket, do you remember? Or was it like after each night of playoffs, you reseed them based on geography? Do you remember how that looked?
I don't at all.
Yeah,
No.
just whoever showed up, wherever you had to go, you went and played.
Yeah. Hey, going back to that Forest City game, Jay, you don't want to talk about the stats on that one?
I didn't know.
Oh yeah, let's hear about those.
You're jumping ahead, Johnny. So slow down, Hall of Famer. Just slow down.
Oh, I thought we were on the Forest City game.
Are we on the Forest City game yet?
Yep.
Yeah.
What do you got, Jay?
You better turn your hearing aid up, Jay.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, but
this
I tell you
has
what,
to be our record. This has to be your record. There was 12 pass attempts by Tony or Boothroyd.
That'd been-
There are 8 completions. That has to be a record. 8 completions in one game?
Nope.
No, come on.
A couple guys that are close to 20. But it makes the leaderboard in the record book. Anything over 5 gets you in there. And I have a good buddy from Dyke, New Hartford, and they've been a pass-happy team for decades now. I'll send him West Hancock passing stats, and he goes, literally 5 completions gets you on the leaderboard. I was like, yeah, and it's not really that big of a leaderboard either. It's just I got to keep going down to numbers so that we get a lot of names on that. So
is there 10 even on your leaderboard?
Oh yeah, there's plenty. Yeah. But,
hey Jay, and them stats on that Forest City game, does it say who threw the passes by chance?
Well, I had Tony Boothroyd.
No.
I think that is right.
Because Foy ended up getting hurt.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, I think Tony Boothroyd ended the year with us.
Did he?
I think so.
Yeah, Tony Boothroyd ended up starting quarterback, but they're talking about the Hall of Famer right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't you remember when did we put in the halfback pass?
Oh yeah. So you must have thrown one.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yep. And I remember my parents after the game, somebody listened to it on the radio, and the announcer said he threw it left-handed even. Well, I was left-handed.
Was it for a completion?
Well, it was a touchdown to Jay.
Nice.
But he's not going to bring that up.
Why would I?
Jay must have been the only person that scored passing for receiving for us.
Pretty much.
All
No,
right.
I think Wade Maroon scored a touchdown too. I'm pretty sure. Oh.
How many rushing yards did you get that night, Johnny?
I don't even have, I couldn't print the stuff off, Jay. I have no idea.
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
I was thrilled with that left-handed pass.
How about this, Dan? I mean, we had 112 yards passing that game. Is that even close to a record?
Jim Deemer has most of the records from the 73 team. And then there's a couple in like 2013 when we had a winless season, the stats kind of got inflated when we were passing because we were behind all the time. But anything over 100 yards, 145 gets you on the leaderboard. So that's not a bad sign. I mean, 145 for West Hancock football, that's a pretty good number. So, and you'll see later when I get to that end of the podcast stats. It's crazy, some of the numbers. All right, let's talk playoffs here. This was possibly the strangest playoff game in school history. One of them, 2006, the Fog Bowl against Newell Fonda, when no one could see what was going on except for the people on the field. This game, weather-wise, got kind of weird too. First playoff game since 73. It started on a Wednesday, ended on a Thursday, and it's not because the game went to like 8 overtimes. It was because you had to stop the game and then restart it later. Talk about the weather and why you had to go back to Jewel twice, or you had to go to Jewel twice.
Well, I did do a little research on it, but one thing I didn't know, the game actually started late. Did you guys remember that?
Yeah, I think it stormed that night, right?
It actually started late, and I think it started like 45 minutes late. So then, it was like rainy and all that other stuff. And then at halftime, we're in the locker room. And of course, I think all that lightning started coming through. And I don't know how long we were in there at halftime, but it was a long time.
Yeah.
And they finally ended up calling the game. It was definitely late. I know we got home really late that night, but the thing I really remember about that game the most is, it was really nice and warm that first night, and we were kicking.
Yep.
And the next night was completely different, freezing cold. The ground was hard, just absolutely 100% different.
What else do you guys remember about the weather delay?
I remember sitting in their cafeteria waiting for it had to be their cafeteria, but I don't know if anybody remembers this, but we found their playbook for the game. I'm not kidding you. We found their playbook, and what I remember about the playbook was they were running at me. Because I was a defensive end, and I don't know why they would run after me the whole game. I mean,
We're going at our best player.
that doesn't make sense to target one person. It just doesn't make sense.
Our leading receiver too.
But I absolutely remember seeing their playbook, and I don't know if somebody left it there or, but I do remember there were a lot of plays towards me. I might have had a little.
I think there was a little too much time on some people's hands at halftime. How about
Yeah.
Planted a fake playbook to throw you off your game. Yeah.
They might have.
And so, what time did you have the game on Thursday? Was it a 7:30 kick again? Did they have you come earlier? You guys remember?
Remember that? Probably 7:30. I don't remember. I don't remember it starting late. Now that you guys say that, I still don't remember that. I don't even know what time we got home that first night.
Yeah,
It had to be real late that first night. Jeez.
Yeah, because you didn't start till 8:15. Halftime was probably a little after 9. You probably sit an hour or so and see if you can play the game while you're there. It was probably 10:30-ish, just guessing before you even got out of there, maybe. So it was probably midnight or so at the earliest, would be my guess.
Yeah. I don't remember, but Chris was right on the weather. It was very cold and hard the next day.
Yeah.
That was horrid.
Yeah. And just transitioning this whole thing here too, that was a good football team as well. But you know what? So we played Wednesday, Thursday, and I think we were actually supposed to play that weekend too. Does that sound right? And then we ended up, I think they backed it up till Monday for us because we had to play those 2 nights in a row. So we literally played Wednesday, Thursday, and Monday football games, and that turned into a real tough, time there.
And you traveled 3 times as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and traveled 3 times.
Yeah. Did the fans show back up on Thursday? You had a lot of people there excited about playoff football. Did most of them come back the next night?
I think they did. I don't remember for sure, but yeah, I think we did have a pretty good crowd both nights.
Yeah.
I think you're right too, being that, first year in the playoffs for how many years, but I don't remember either. No clue.
And those fans are like, we paid for that ticket. We're going to get our money's worth out of it, even though it takes a whole tank of
Yeah,
gas.
exactly.
Knowing Brit fans, I'm guessing most of them showed back up. That'd be.
I'm sure Ann Hagen was there.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure.
Do you guys ever watch the live stream of current West Hancock games? If you do, you
Yes.
can still hear Ann about every third play, especially on third downs on defense. Through the camera, through the glass of the press box, you can still hear Ann's voice. It hasn't changed. It's
Does she
great.
have the blowhorn still or not?
Nope, that got banned years ago. Rumor has it that the state may have, there's no artificial noisemakers at the Dome for sure, but then most schools have that as well. I'm pretty sure it's the Ann Hagen rule because she brought that everywhere she went. So
Well, I got a little bit of a funny story there. So Vance ended up going to the same college I went to as well, and she ended up bringing that thing over to the college where we played too. And that but never did get banned, but she was blowing it there too.
she'd get plenty of space around her to herself. No one wants to sit right in front of that thing. So
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about this South Hamilton game here. The 2-night game. We struck first in the first quarter, 7-0 lead. They scored in the third, and then we won it in the fourth for a 14-7 victory. John and Mike had the two scores. Oh, sorry, Hall of Famer John Weiland and Mike Kelly had the two scores. Vance had the 2 extra points. Steve Wink had an interception and a fumble recovery in that game. And that's what got us to the quarterfinals. Just talk about the general excitement of the community, of the team, of coach, getting that third playoff win in school history. At this point, we're 3-0 in the playoffs in our school history. Pep rallies. What do you guys remember leading up to this next game?
I just remember, I just like you said, Dan, the excitement. You kind of walked around town and you thought you were the big dogs in town during the time. I mean, it was a lot of fun.
The thing I will say, it's just the whole community. It's just, I live in a bigger town here in the Kansas City area, but if you go from the cooks to the school teachers to John Swinson at Swinson's Hardware to whoever, I mean, everybody was involved. Everybody was behind all sports. And like Jay said, you walked around town and you felt pretty special, but they just really, really supported you. And
Yeah,
they
it was
still
great,
do
great
today.
support, yes. And even, on every Friday morning before games, we'd go eat breakfast downtown, and that was just, great camaraderie stuff we did as well. And the town also loved to see that too. So it was just great support all around.
Didn't Ann do them breakfasts too at the Wheat 3 or whatever?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, that was awesome.
And I want to bring up, we talk about Coach Sanger a lot. One of you guys mentioned him earlier, but Coach Perkins came, I believe, in '83, your junior season. Getting to the excellence part here. In the 40 years of West Hancock football, Sanger and Perkins' fingerprints are all over that program. Perkins came in '83, turned the defense into one of the state's best. He was a head coach for just a handful of years in the '60s and '70s. He got put in the Hall of Fame a handful of years ago as an assistant coach, which that does not happen very often for someone to get put in the Hall of Fame and they weren't even a head coach. 110 shutouts in the last 40 years, and we have allowed single-digit points in over 3/4 of those games. So if it wasn't a shutout, most of those other games were, giving up 3 to 9 points is all. Then obviously Coach Sanger passed away in 2020 after a tough battle with cancer. He had a 358 and 160 overall record. He was 5th all time in wins at the time of his death. He's been passed 1 spot, so he's still 6th. 6 years, almost 5 full seasons after he's been gone. What can you guys say about Coach Sanger and Coach Perkins kind of leading the program all these years?
Well, I'll start. I'll go. What I was going to say, I really think he came our senior year, is what I remember.
Okay.
Coach Perkins. And I remember having a conversation with Todd Byers. In fact, I think it was at the Hall of Fame ceremony last year. And Todd brought up a really good point. And what he said was, Terry Barton was before that. And Terry Barton really pushed the whole weight thing. And that kind of what really started when we were in high school was the weights program. And that thing, nowadays they got paid weight trainers that come in and they're like the weight coaches and they get paid for doing it. But these coaches were just coming before and after school and open the weight program. And then we transitioned into Perkins. And I think it was one of those things, just like when we lost Don Hiscocks, we were a little bit, oh boy, what's going to happen? We got a new coach coming in and how's this going to work? And at first, this is kind of my recollection. We're kind of like, what's this guy talking about? This is, different than what we used to do and pursuit and all this other thing. And then it was one of those things that it just kept clicking and going. I think we just got stronger and stronger and better with Coach Perkins when he came in there. And that's what I recall about that whole deal.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. Coach Perkins, for me at least, at defense, I thought, I love playing defense. That was, to me, that you can get in there and hit people, and that was fun. And he really brought a lot of technique to that as well, as far as even for I played linebacker. So just reading what that guard is telling you to do and, reading the fullback and the running backs. And so it was just a lot of technique that he brought to it that I hadn't really noticed before, or hadn't really been taught before. And I think he came to Britt before, he was at Lake Mills, I think, prior to. And so I knew that he was a good coach. And it was just, until you really see it, you really didn't know it. But even again, Coach Sanger, the guy, just a winner. I mean, he was somebody really that just taught me a lot, even, mentally as well, that, it's kind of like if you miss a tackle, guess what? You've got another play. So Sanger, he added a big mental piece for it to, for me also.
Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
I agree with you, Jeff. Fedge. I mean, for me personally, Sanger and I'd say Perkins even more is, there's a great football and stuff like that, but they taught you life lessons. That's what I took away from Gene and Coach Sanger was, they taught you what you needed to do to go on. And for me personally, I wasn't Hall of Famer material, but I like to think it. But I think they taught you a little bit more than just football, and I think that might get lost here and there. But there's not a day I don't go by thanking those two individuals. I often think about those two individuals as the impact that they made in my life, because I don't think I'd be where I'm at today without them. So you asked about the impact they had, not necessarily impact in football.
Yeah, in general, that's the thing. The football field's just an extension of the classroom, and those guys knew that better than anybody. It wasn't. Coach Sanger wanted to win more than anybody, and he hated to lose more than anybody, but he knew full on it's a whole lot more than just wins and losses and trophies and championships.
Yeah,
it was evident.
Yeah, it was great playing for both of them. It's kind of hard to talk about Perkins when he was only there for a year, or Sanger you had pretty much your whole life. But Perkins was a great coach, great guy, great to play with. Sanger, his memory was just outstanding, just great, just talking to the guy just off alone. But playing for both of them was awesome. Couldn't ask for anything better.
The thing that I think it was Jeff that brought it up that I recall too, like even when my kids went through playing sports, so many of these coaches make kids scared to death to make a mistake, and then they yank them the minute they make a mistake, and like Jeff said, it was the complete opposite. It's like, hey, you're going to make a mistake, just go back out there and make a play the next time. They believed in you. And Sanger cared so much about everybody. And then just think about gym class. No matter what we played in gym, pickleball, tennis, if you played Sanger in any of that stuff, that guy was going to beat you no matter what happened and what you were playing. Just like Dan said, he wanted to win no matter what he was doing.
Yeah, he's very competitive.
So your last game for Coach Sanger was a quarterfinal loss at Pocahontas, 27-7. Pocahontas went on to win the state championship that season in 1A in 1984. It was one of like 16 or 17 times now that one of our playoff loss ended to the eventual state champion, whether it was in the title game, the semis, the quarters, whatever. But we always, more than half the time, I should say, ended up losing to the eventual state champ. If it wasn't the state champ, it usually ended up being the runner-up. So just thinking about how expansive a trophy case we have, it could, they put us somewhere else and we make it a couple rounds farther. It's one of those woulda, coulda, shoulda games. But Pocahontas was the real deal in that game. They scored one time each quarter, and then we scored in the second quarter on Jeff Kelly's 6-yard run. We only had 151 yards of offense, but they only had 201. So do you guys remember? It's kind of an odd looking stat line. They only outscore us or out yardage us by 50, but beat us by 3 scores. Was there some turnovers? Do you guys remember how that looked?
It seemed like we were in the game the whole time. I don't know if we had what happened, but we were in there. That score doesn't justify what it was, I don't think, at all. I was almost thinking we were up, but I guess we weren't, were we?
No, they scored one quarter, so they had a lead on us when we scored. And then we tried to play catch up the rest of the time.
I'm like John. I kind of remember that I felt like we were in it, but you look at the score, it doesn't seem like we really were. But I just never remember it quite being that bad. But it was kind of like back to the Buffalo Center game. It was not our night. Bob was he didn't even come to. Did he come to the sidelines that game? I feel like he was.
He did, but he was in the wheelchair, I think.
So he wasn't even coaching. So we just got through that 2 nights at South Hamilton Jewel. Come back, coach isn't there Monday night to be on our. He's there, but he's not going up and down the sidelines like he typically would. It was just sort of an off night. Another big day, and that's what I recall about that.
Yeah. So you got that quarterfinal trophy that's still in the case today. You guys have heard over the years, I try to really preach this, but besides that 73 team, we got that 81 team winning a conference title. This was that string of playoffs. We made the playoffs in 85, 86, 87, 88, all the 90s except for 98, most of the 2000s, and then we haven't missed the playoffs since 2013. We've got 3 titles in the last 5 years, 4 title games in the last 5 years. I keep just wanting to stress the importance of the history of this program. Like, I've met people who are like, oh, I just heard that a kid from my school beat my record of this and that. That stinks. I always wanted to be the record holder. Well, this program's different. We always want the next team to be the best team. We want records to get broken. Just pretty awesome. You guys are that team. I hope you guys know that that legacy is there. A lot of it because of you guys and what you started. So I wanted to wrap this up here. Got to get my screen ready to share here. I'm not sometimes the techiest. Hold on just a second. Talking about Coach Sanger. Jay mentioned like it's more than just wins and losses. What am I doing here? Hold on. I think I've done this before. There we go. I'm going to share my screen here. I'm going to minimize us here for a second. This was Coach Sanger after the 1996. Can you guys see this?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Coach Sanger after the 96 state championship. I thought this was one video that really epitomizes him and Coach Perkins and the community. You can see the community support here. So I'm going to play this. It's about 6 minutes long here, 7 minutes long, but I think it's just a good thing to end tonight with. See what the volume does here.
Can't hear the sound on that.
Can you guys hear it?
No,
No,
No?
No,
That's weird. Let me see here. I thought I heard Stephan say that. Let me try this. Can you hear it now?
No.
No. Well, do you guys mind if I play it real quick for the recording, and then I'll send it to you in a link here in a little bit.
Yeah, so that's fine.
Yeah, I'll
that's
just do
great.
it. You can just watch a few minutes here. Sorry about that. Just trying this. Can you guys hear it now that you're on the screen again?
No.
no.
Weird. I don't know what's going on. Give me a few minutes. I want to show this as a coach. I'll stop it there. I'm going to link this onto the podcast here when I post it later. But just I was watching that the other day and just wanted to be, the standing ovations, the players cheering for the coaches, the whole gym full. That doesn't happen very often. And he went on to talk about not a whole lot about football. You guys remember coaches pep rally talks and stuff. 15 minutes later, you're like, I'm gonna do anything for this man, but I have no idea what he's talking about. But I know I want to be a better person. I'll fill in the blank. That was Bob Sanger. He just always got you motivated, always wanted you to do better. He always wanted to please him and, not disappoint him and just go out and do your best. So I'll link that. I'm surprised that didn't show up. I've done videos on here before and you can hear him. I don't know what's going on with the technology tonight, but last fact here, 40 years of excellence. And again, I want to thank you guys for being one of those teams that spearheaded these last 40 years, because there are so many people that love West Hancock football to this day. I'm heading up with Rick Sanger on Friday night. I try to get to a lot of the games if I can. If I can't, I'm watching on the live stream. We get thousands and thousands of people who watch those games on the live stream every single week. The dome is packed when we make it. People are always giving money and their time and efforts to keep this program going. Mark has taken over for his dad and just continued the tradition. So, Jay, this one's for you. Since 1984, your senior year, Britt West Hancock has run the ball for 125,614 yards compared to 16,961 yards through the air. So
16,000.
Yep, 125,614 compared to 16,961. We have
great.
run the ball 21,355 times compared to 2,441 times passing the ball. We've completed 987 passes out of 2,441 for 189 touchdowns. but we have, where did I put the touchdowns? 1,578 rushing touchdowns compared to 189 passing touchdowns.
Heck, Jay has most of those touchdowns.
Yeah. Yep. Every time we run the ball for 40 years, 5.88 yards per carry over 40 years, darn near 6 yards every time we run that ball. And then every time we've attempted a pass and we've completed one, it's gone for 6.94 yards. So our running the ball has almost been more successful than passing the ball. And, you know, you can pass the ball 50 yards in the air and catch it and run 70 yards. You know, the odds of getting tackled 2 yards in the backfield or 2 yards downfield running the ball's more, you know, so just unbelievable. I did the mileage here. In the passing game, we've passed the ball in 40 football seasons for 9.63 miles compared to 71.5 miles running the ball. So we've run the ball from Garner and back several times. We haven't even passed the ball all the way to Garner one time in 40 years. So I just thought that was pretty crazy. So
in all those years, we haven't passed the ball to Britt to Garner.
no, not in 40 years. We haven't passed the ball from Britt to Garner.
I might have to talk to Mark Sanger.
Last week during halftime, they had the little kid flag football, and I was texting some of my buddies. I said, "That's too much passing on Sanger Field. That seems sacrilegious to a degree to see all that ball getting chucked around so much." So, yeah, we 71.5 miles running the ball, 9.6 miles passing the ball in 40 years. Yeah, not even to Garner passing the ball. That's how much we've run that sucker over the years. So, pretty unbelievable. So, again, guys, thank you so much for being one of those teams to spearhead this tradition. Pretty awesome stuff. 40 years later, here we are sitting on a podcast at 8:30 at night, or in Stephan's, it's like almost supper time for him now the next day. So who would have thought, sitting on a podcast 40 years later talking about Britt West Hancock football is pretty neat. So again, I want to thank all my sponsors. I have Window World in Mason City as my lifetime sponsors, along with Levi Don Trucking, Doug and Kathy Zool, Ewing Funeral Home and Monument Company, Pritchard's Auto, Triple B's Food Truck, Swenson Hardware, Zach and Chris Slugger, and Nick Schmidt. Next up, I have a couple Eckels Cousins, Lisa Hiscocks, Dave Beech, former teacher there, football coaches' wives, and then Sue Wood and Kurt DeVore from the West Hancock Middle School when I was growing up, plus hopefully 4 or 5 high school football playoff podcast episodes we do every year. Fellas, this is always your chance to shout out some teammates or coaches or anything you like, oh crap, during the Belmont game, I forgot to mention this. What do you want to say to everyone out there before we wrap it up?
And we forgot to mention Uber, Chuck Byers.
There you go.
Yeah.
Another good one right there.
We forgot Uber.
That whole junior class was good though. So, you know, my brother Mike, I think if it wasn't for him, he ran the ball most of the time at fullback and got a lot of those touchdowns. Mike Smith and then Don Halick, Don Finch, as a sophomore at nose tackle, that guy was good. I mean, he had a great season for us that year. And so really, if it wasn't for those underclassmen, I mean, we would not have had the success that we did.
Exactly. Yeah. I think Don Finch even made all conference or something too that year.
He might have.
Yeah. The underclassmen were so great, so good and helpful for sure.
Yep, definitely. We couldn't have done it without them, that's for sure.
When their success showed the years after that as well, they went on and had good success as well.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to just thank the 1984 team and the coach Sanger and Perkins for allowing me on the team. And I had a great time in Britt 40 years ago, and I still have fond memories of Britt and living with the Bruins family. It's a shame Wade wasn't on the podcast tonight, but great community in Britt, Iowa. So it's looking back with fond memories.
Stephan, have you ever made it back to Britt since then? Oh, sorry.
I've been
Dan.
back to Britt a few times in the 90s and 2000 or something like that. And my sister actually lives in Wisconsin, so I'll still have to visit her.
Nice.
Come back.
Back to Britt sometime. That'd be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
All right, fellas. Well, I appreciate you being on here. It's been a good time. Again, if you want to give to the Sanger Legacy Fund, go to sangerstrong.com. If you want to sponsor the podcast, get a hold of me, let me know, and we will make that happen. So, fellas, again, congratulations. 40 years of West Hancock Britt football excellence. Go Eagles.